Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for Campus Conflict 101. My name is Emily Gerst, and I serve as the director of the Office of Conflict Resolution and Education here at William and Mary in Student Affairs. And I'm thrilled that you've chosen to take some time to learn about campus conflict as you help settle your student into campus. And I'm excited for us to talk about a couple of different things today. Three main things. I'm going to share a little bit of the why of conflict. Why do we have a conflict resolution office? And how do we think about and approach conflict holistically as a community at William and Mary? I'm also going to share with you the top three most common campus conflicts that we help students navigate and some of the best practices that we share with them. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like for you as families and supporters to support your students for good conflict. I often get asked in this role, why have a conflict resolution office? Why would you want to talk about conflict so much? And the first thing that I'll say is that it's not that William and Mary has more conflict than any other university. Like all places, we have our fair share. But what you should take heart in knowing is that William and Mary has an office of conflict resolution and education because we are deeply committed to community, to belonging, and to all the values that you're learning about as you join our community. And in any good and healthy community, we know there's going to be conflict. Conflict at its root is difference. Sometimes it's difference under stress, but difference itself is not inherently bad. And so here at William and Mary, we believe conflict itself is not a bad thing, but it's about how we show up for our conflicts, how we approach them, and how we think about them that creates the opportunity for growth. And so that's the mindset that we bring to our conflicts here, wanting to feel equipped and empowered so that when conflict comes, when we have to have a difficult conversation, that our students are ready for that, that they know how to navigate that with wisdom, with clarity, and with kindness. And so really helping students embrace that. For so many of us, we want to avoid our conflicts because they are difficult and draining. And so really pushing back against that and helping our students see that conflict can be really good for them personally, for their relationships, and for our community as a whole. Conflict is also a critical professional and personal skill. No matter who your student is and what they're going to end up doing with their lives, they are going to have conflict. And so we believe deeply in helping your student not only learn well in the classroom, but learn and grow as a person. And developing conflict skills is a part of that. So many students, as they'll step into leadership roles on campus, they get jobs and then they transition into the workforce. They transition into growing deeper friendships, having a partner, having families. We know that conflict will be in the midst of all of those things. So, our vision is that students leave here well equipped for the conflicts that they'll navigate personally and that they'll help others navigate throughout the rest of their lives. Finally, our approach to conflict is a part of a broader approach at William and Mary to building a restorative community. So we partner across campus with our conduct office, with our compliance office, to approach conflicts of all shapes and sizes with a restorative justice lens. So looking at things like community connection and restoring connection after harm has occurred, making sure that we're paying attention to people's relational needs, and again, leaning into conflict as growth. So let's talk about some of the most common campus conflicts. So I want you to think about as you imagine campus life, what are some of the things that you think students are most likely to be navigating? The number one answer that I bet many of you thought of is shared living conflict. So roommate conflict. This is the number one thing that people think about when they think about conflict on campus. And for good reason, because it is really the most common one, right? You think about all of your students have spent time living with you or in other places. They're all coming to campus to live in very close quarters, and everyone has a different idea of what their ideal living situation looks like, different ideas of clean, of what feels normal to them. And so there's lots of conflict that can emerge here, right? Just different living styles. We see lots of things like noise complaints or like using shared items or inappropriately. Any number of things, we see it happen. Some of the best practices that your student can take to be mindful of shared living conflicts before and while they're happening is to fill out a shared living agreement. So, the number one thing that I would recommend is to tell your student to help them see the value of having a conversation early on with a roommate or with suite mates to define some norms and expectations for their shared living. Residence Life has a shared living agreement, template, and conversation guide that students can use, and that is available on StarRes, which is the same portal that your student used to select their housing. And they can use this, but even if they don't, talk about what cleanliness means. Talk about how often you want to take out the trash. Talk about how do you want to raise issues to one another when they happen. Having that initial conversation is so important to set up the rest of the year, and it helps create some safety when something happens later on. Students will feel a little bit more comfortable bringing things up to each other rather than sitting on it for a long time. And that fits nicely with our other best practice, which is to raise issues early. I'd say this is the number one thing that we see students when they come into us and they have shared living conflict that's really bad. Usually it means that they've been sitting on it for a long time. So maybe their roommate was really messy day one, but they didn't say anything about it until February. You're going to be way more upset about it in February than you were in September. And so our advice, raise those issues early. Say, hey, we need to talk about how we're going to share this room, what cleanliness means. Let's get ahead of that so that you're not getting into a really contentious situation later down the road. So shared living is number one. The second most common conflict that we see with students is student organizational conflict. So when students join club sports teams or organizations that align with their interests, we see that do all sorts of wonderful things for their connection on campus. But anytime you're organizing around something and you've got structures and bylaws, you're also going to have some conflict. This can just be interpersonal dynamics of living and sharing a lot of things in close quarters. We also see some positional challenges here of peer leadership, right? Having to communicate difficult decisions or make hard decisions. Sometimes we're seeing disruptive behavior, right? People doing and saying things that are causing harm in the group. And we also see the effects of the rumor mill, gossip, people talking about one another, and that getting back to people. One of our best practices here is we encourage students and organizations to talk to people and not about them. So when something has happened, whether that's just an interpersonal challenge or something in the structure of the club, go to the person who's involved directly, ask to hear their perspective, and try to involve them in the solution. What we see feed a lot of organizational conflict is that people don't engage directly. They talk to other people or they bring it to the leadership, but people are really hesitant to go to one another. And really that is often the thing that helps it resolve. Our other recommendation here is to review what we call the good and fair process materials. So we have partnered closely with Student Leadership Development, which oversees all of our registered student organizations, to create what we call the good and fair process. And this is our guidance, it's our advice to student leaders about how to navigate concerns within a group, how to have some of those direct conversations, how to think broadly about helping people grow and learn through conflict. So this is a great resource. It also helps students know when they join organizations what they should expect from their student leaders in conflict. So if you were ever in a position where you were wondering what that would look like, that's a great resource, and it's available on the Student Leadership Development website. Our third most common conflict that we help students with is academic concerns. And I bet this is a surprise to no one listening because your students are here because they are so strong academically that students care a lot about their grades. They care a lot about their relationships with their professors. So we often are helping students know how to raise some of those concerns that may be about a grade or sometimes dealing with something that a professor has done or said to them that's harmful. This can also include working relationships with professors and in group projects. We all know the struggle of a good group project. Some of the best practices here, particularly if your student's looking to raise a concern to a professor, we recommend scheduling time with that professor face-to-face or in a virtual meeting or utilizing office hours. A lot of times what we see students do initially is send a really long email that may have a laundry list of concerns, or it's a lot of text. And typically, professors are going to respond a lot better in an in-person conversation rather than an email. Professors get a lot of emails, even if they're well-intentioned. Sometimes things can get lost in the sauce in an email, and it's better to sit down and have the conversation with them. One of the reasons that that's true is because having that conversation is going to allow your student to help the professor understand the impact of a grade, an impact of something that they've done and said, and be much more specific in that conversation and use some communication techniques, including tone and body language, that can help everyone feel a little bit more at ease rather than feeling tense in the conversation. We also tell students that when they go into these conversations with professors, to be really clear and direct about their concern, but also to prepare to ask questions, to not assume that they have full knowledge of something, but to ask their professor to share context or to share their perspective, and to be ready to receive some feedback or some new information that may change how they initially went into that conversation. So those are our top three conflicts that we help students with: shared living, student organizations, and academic concerns. I'm going to share now a little bit about what those resources look like and when the best times for students to connect with conflict resolution and education are. So in CRE, we have both proactive and responsive resources in conflict. Our proactive resources are skill building and development and programming. So we do a lot of trainings and workshops across campus. I like to tell students that as you get involved, you're going to start to see us everywhere, a little bit behind the scenes. So that might be when they join organizations, might be when they get a job on campus, they become an RA or an orientation leader. We're involved in the training and development of many of our student leaders and our student employees across campus, teaching those foundational conflict skills, helping people navigate those conversations well. We also run a handful of programming throughout the year, both sort of fun and engaging, as well as programs that seek to develop those skills in non-conflict settings. So you're seeing pictures here of two of our signature events from last year. We had an event called Colors of Conflict that you see up here. We used different color water balloons to represent different conflict styles. And so we invited students to reflect on their conflict style. They got to pin the water balloon to the board and throw a dart at it, and it was filled with paint. So we created some fun art there. And this picture at the bottom is from our event called the Meet and Eat. The Meet and Eat is an intentional and curated experience. Students get to have dinner with one another, and they're getting to practice and learn about the skills of listening and asking questions that build deeper relationships. So we really encourage students to come to this event who want to grow those skills and who want to connect more deeply with one another. We are running this event during orientation this year. We have 2 instances of it. It's on the Tribe Guide checklist. So if that sounds like something that your student is interested in, please encourage them to register. We do need registration in advance, and we're hoping to welcome a lot of students to that event. We also offer a wide range of responsive resources. This is what people typically think of when they think of a conflict resolution office. The number one resource that we provide to students is conflict coaching. Conflict coaching is available to all students on campus. And conflict coaching is meeting with someone who is not involved in the conflict, but has conflict expertise to help you make your best decisions in conflict. So we see a wide range of conflicts and needs come into the office for coaching. This can be everything from writing an email to a professor and wanting someone to help you know if you're being clear enough, are you being kind enough, giving some feedback on how to craft a text message, how to communicate a difficult decision, how to have a difficult conversation raising an issue to people. Those are some of the most common things that we see. We also host weekly office hours on campus. Those are in the Sadler Center, which is the student center, and they're also available virtually. And so that's an opportunity to drop in, talk about any conflict, big or small. Those are primarily run by student specialists. I have a number of students who work in the office and are trained as conflict coaches and mediators. And so it is these students who are often providing coaching, they're running office hours, they're providing these services to their fellow students. Finally, we offer facilitated conversations and mediations. These are structured processes that involve all parties in a conflict who are struggling to communicate or who want some structure to help come to an agreement or talk about something challenging. So we work with them as a mediator to coach some communication, provide some feedback, clarify and get underneath why things have been difficult. We partner with Residence Life to run shared living mediation. So that is a common place that we're able to be helpful to students, but we mediate and facilitate for any number of issues. Finally, we've talked about what conflict resolution and education can offer to your student. I'm going to offer a few thoughts on what supporting your student for good conflict looks like, knowing that many of these are things that you have been doing for them for years and years before they came to William and Mary, and I hope that you'll continue to do for them while they're here. So the first piece is to be their confidant. One of the things that we know in the Office of Conflict Resolution and Education is that the number one place that students go for conflict help and the place that they trust the most is you all. They go to family and they go to supporters. And so one of the best things you can do for your student in conflict is just be there for them when they need to talk about it. And when they do, when they pick up that phone or on FaceTime, listen and ask them questions. Let them get it out, even if you think that you probably know what they need to do because you know them well. One of the things we talk about a lot in the office is that the act of listening helps create that feeling of understanding. It helps people move through their strong emotions. So let them have that space, ask them good questions to help clarify things and get underneath the issues that they're facing. The second role that you play for your student is cheerleader, and you cheer them on in so many capacities. And so our ask is that you would cheer them on in conflict. Doing conflict is hard, and it often takes bravery to step into a difficult conversation that where it would be easier to just disengage and not do it. So if your student's talking and saying, I could say something to my roommate, but I might just let it go, or I used to be friends with them and it'll just be easier to kind of avoid them on campus. Sometimes that's a good option, but sometimes a little encouragement to say, hey, one conversation might actually help resolve this and it might feel really good. Sometimes we all need a little push there. Third and finally, be their connector. Hopefully you are getting a good sense of all of the resources available to them at William and Mary. And remember that we're here. I know that when you're starting your journey at William and Mary, you're settling your student in and thinking about all that they'll do here. I know that conflict is often not the first thing you're thinking about. We don't want our students to experience conflict because we know it can be difficult, but we know that they're going to. So even if they're not experiencing conflict yet, file it away that you have the Office of Conflict Resolution and Education as a resource for them. And when they start to talk about conflict and maybe they want a place to go to get some advice, remind them that we're here and help connect them to us. Here's all the ways that you and your student can connect with us. This QR code will take you to our our webpage. If you ever are wondering how to connect, if you just Google conflict resolution, William and Mary, we pop right up. But this is our website, our email, our Instagram. Please feel free to give us a follow. And also the place where we keep our office hours and events schedule for easy reference. Again, thank you for taking some time to learn about campus conflict. It means a lot to me. I hope that this has been helpful. Any questions or anything that we can answer, please feel free to reach out. Thanks and welcome to William and Mary.